if I told you that the United States had a president for whom English was not his first language? What if I told you that this president spoke with a distinct foreign-sounding accent his whole life? What if I told you that this president didn't speak any English at all until he was 7 or 8 years old? Oh, it's all true. That and more. In this video, we're going to examine that and some of the assumptions that are made about the primacy of English, even among people who were born and raised in the United States through its history and today. I think this one might be touching a nerve with some people. I'm really looking forward to the comment section of this video. My name's Chris, and on my channel, I remember things because someone has to. Thanks for revisiting the channel or visiting if it's your first time. I really do enjoy the likes and subscriptions that people have been giving me lately. Please consider doing that. It is free after all. It helps me out. You know what to do. And we are going to get right into it. I am not going to be coy about this any longer. The president in question would be one Martin Van Buren. And it turns out we're not even pronouncing the man's name correctly. As his political enemies sometimes referred to him to mock him a little bit, ramping up the accent, the man was Martin van Buren. And he spoke Dutch. Now, he didn't actually speak the modern Dutch, which is spoken in the Netherlands today, nor did he speak the variety of Flemish that you would find in Belgium today. He spoke a now extinct language, which is known as Hudson Valley Dutch or Jersey Dutch, and it is a distinctly American language. It is pretty much a cousin of Afrikaans in South Africa and developed much along the same way. You have an isolate population of Dutch people who have interactions with some of the linguistic groups that they're surrounded by, and this creates a new dialect of a language, or if you prefer a new language, the old linguistics joke is that a language is a dialect with an army. Van Buren was born in 1782 in Kinderhook, New York, which was no doubt pronounced Kinderhook, or something along those lines, forgive my pronunciation, by the people who founded it. We need to remember that a lot of the middle Atlantic states, New York, New Jersey, what's now Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, those areas had early Dutch influence to a greater or lesser extent. It was not entirely clear in the 17th century for a while there that they were going to become British colonies. A lot of those areas were settled first by white people who were Dutch. And some of those areas actually even earlier by a combination of Swedes and Finns under the Swedish flag. And as a result, you just have a whole variety of place names that are drawn from those languages. And in the case of Hudson Valley Dutch or Jersey Dutch, you had the development of a language which was a combination of particular dialects from parts of the Netherlands, present-day Netherlands, of Dutch, combined with Plattdeutsch, which is a lowland German dialect, and combined with bits of English from their neighbors, and combined, most interestingly, with bits of Algonquin languages, also from their neighbors, so a distinctly American Dutch blend. And there were people who grew up with this language, and for whom that was their primary language, and that is true for our 8th president of the United States, Martin van Buren. Now, a lot of you may remember, as I do, that he was the 8th president because of Cosmo Kramer on Seinfeld. It's one of the only things we usually remember about the man, that there were the Van Buren boys, a New York street gang, who were very fond of their fellow Knickerbocker president. If we recall, they were going to beat Kramer up, but he accidentally, because he was holding a garlic shaker at a pizzeria, he threw their gang sign accidentally, which was, you know, the number 8 for the 8th president. A funny little bit and kind of an accurate bit when we're talking about New York pride. New York, Hudson Valley, Northern Jersey had a ton of people who were speaking Dutch at home, who were speaking this variety of Dutch at home, and Van Buren was one of them. Now, it looks like he did not learn any English until he started English language school at about the age of 7 or 8. He did have this accent throughout his whole life. It looks like he was probably attending church in the language until he was about a tweener, and he did learn to speak English and write, and was apparently a great orator in English, and actually, very interestingly, became the candidate of the Free Soil Party, anti-slavery party, in 1848. His presidential term was from 1837 till 1841, and he started, at least initially, as on the same general political team as Andrew Jackson. Some of that interesting history, which we kind of skip over a lot in an American high school because, you know, it's not the Civil War and it's not the Revolutionary period and the Constitutional period. So those chapters, you had a quiz on it at some point, but you didn't need to know a lot about Martin Van Buren. He continued to speak the language to his family. He spoke the language when he was not doing official business within the White House. He was speaking and writing the language to his family members and to friends while occupying the White House. And I find it really very interesting that there was a president of the United States who was primarily choosing to communicate in his private life and in his social life, not in English. You know, we may then draw some conclusions from that about, well, if not speaking English is good enough for the President of the United States while occupying the White House, is it good enough for others? How angry should you be exactly at the convenience store clerk? He was not the only president to occupy the White House who was using that same language or a variation thereof while in office. Theodore Roosevelt, the Roosevelt family, both cousins, although Theodore older, or at least born first and able to still have connections to the old family language, the Roosevelts were in fact descendants of this same stock, old families in what becomes New York, and Theodore apparently would write to members of his family in Dutch. He did not have a Dutch accent. He did not grow up with it as his primary language as a youth, but he did grow up hearing it, and apparently was I don't know fluent. I'm not gonna throw the word fluent out there, but he was conversant enough that he was writing letters to family in the language. So that's super interesting, and doing so also while occupying the White House. There are a couple of other Americans of note who we should mention, who could speak or did speak the same language as their primary language. One of those would be Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth was born as a slave to a Dutch family in New York, and the name that they gave her was Isabella Baumfrey or Bomafrey. I've seen both. The Baumfrey sounds to me like it's leaning more toward the Plattdeutsch. But in any event, that was her birth name, and she Malcolm X'd herself and rechristened herself Sojourner Truth. And that whole speech where she gives the Eight-Isle Woman speech, I believe that was in 1851. When you have people do dramatic readings of that or what have you, because it's in non-standard English parts of it, people tend to give it a reading that it must be in African American vernacular. And that's not the case at all. Apparently, she spoke with a Dutch accent. English was not her first language. So if you're doing a dramatic reading of that, you should, I don't know, contact your local Dutch American club to find out a little bit more what that should sound like. Absolutely fascinating, and an important reminder that language is not genetic. You can't go by people's phenotype to know what language they speak. You can't look at a person and assume what language or languages they know. It is entirely nurture. It is 0% nature. You are raised with one or more languages. The final American who I would mention who also grew up in one of these communities initially was Cornelius Vanderbilt. We'd say Vanderbilt, founder of Vanderbilt University, which is actually Van der Bilt. It appears that his ancestors were from a town in the Utrecht province called De Bilt, and then got attached to their surname Van der Bilt from the Bilt, which then gets rendered into a new surname of Vanderbilt, which we all know. So that's a very interesting stuff. I am going to give you some idea of what the language was like. I'm going to put on the screen a passage which is in modern Dutch, as spoken today in the Netherlands, for a little bit, and then I'm going to switch that to the same passage in Hudson Valley or Jersey Dutch for a little bit, and you can see some of the differences there. This is super interesting to me. Love languages. Find this completely interesting. And there are words to this day in American English which come from this language. Those would include the word boss and the word cookie, among others, are both introduced into English from this language. I think that it's important to note that the United States is and always has been a land of great linguistic diversity, and how could it not be? How could you have people living on this enormous land area, a continental landmass, and have all of these language isolates, have all of these various native groups who already lived in the United States and its territories, have all of these waves of immigration, and not develop additional language isolates, not develop various languages which are unique now to the United States, and not have all of this linguistic diversity? I think it's something we should recognize and celebrate. In this video, I'm not even talking about immigrant groups who arrived in the United States after the land that they landed in was part of the United States. For the purposes of this video, I am alone referring to groups of people who were either indigenous and or groups of people who emigrated to what became the United States, groups of people who are living somewhere and then the borders of the United States caught up to them. This is fascinating, and I think that we need to recognize that these people were there first. They were there first, and then English as an overlay displaced and continues to displace their languages, and we can look at some of the numbers of how many people in the United States and its territories that we're talking about. Now, currently, the U.S. Census tells us that about 22% of Americans speak a language other than English at home with their families, and the vast majority of those people are immigrants. However, something that we never talk about or never deal with is that about 3.8 million Americans, that is about 1.2% of U.S. population, according to most recent census statistics, speak a non-English language at home, which was there first. And we can look at some of the highest concentrations of that being Spanish speakers in the Southwest, and of course in Puerto Rico, in Appalachia, and in the South we have Gula. In Louisiana we have two variations on French. We have both French Creole and the Cajun language. When we speak of the Amish, when we speak of actually more accurately Anabaptist communities in Pennsylvania, where I'm from, and Ohio, Indiana, and other states, you're talking about a language isolate of people who spoke a variety of German, Hessian German predominantly, and have become a language isolate, and now that dialect of German differs from standardized book German that you would hear now in Germany or other parts of Europe. We of course have Puerto Rican Spanish, its own interesting dialect. Let us not forget that the state of Alaska has over 20 indigenous languages. Let's not forget Hawaiian speaking. Wait for it. You sitting down for this one? Hawaiian. We have people in Guam. We have people in the U.S. Virgin Islands and other places, all of whom are Americans, all of whom have U.S. passports. all of the groups that I'm mentioning were there before the border got there. We might throw in Tejanos, your Texans who were there pre-1848. And all of these people speak languages at home which were there before the U.S. border was. It is estimated that about 70 to 80 languages are currently in use in the home that are indigenous languages to the United States. That is to say Native American languages, that is continental Native American languages. It's about 342,000 Americans, and that is about 0.11% of the U.S. population. We did a damn good job of wiping those people off the map, didn't we? Something you can hang your hat on. The largest group of those are Navajo. There are about 170,000 Navajo speakers. There are about 25,000 total speakers of various languages in Alaska. And then you have some folks in the plains in the Great Lakes region. I've been to one day on the Pennsylvania-New York border. A friend and I were up at the Oneida Reservation, and I actually got to see the Oneida language on a few signs, which was incredible. I had never seen that before. I don't know how many folks are speaking that at home, but it's on signs. There are about 24,000 Native Hawaiian speakers who are fluent home speakers, about 40,000 proficient still Native Hawaiian speakers. 2 to 3% of the population of Hawaii still speaks Hawaiian as their first language. Very interestingly, you have the heritage Spanish speakers. Now, these would be people whose families in part or in whole were living in the American West before the border moved to them, before the Mexican-American War, before the War of Texas Independence and Texas joining the United States, before all of those territories being incorporated into the United States. There are still roughly 1.5 million Americans who are Spanish speakers who were there before the U.S. border moved to them. New Mexico is a wonderful case study for this. In New Mexico, an estimated 26.5% of the population does not speak English at home, and roughly 70% of those people are heritage Spanish speakers. They were there when it was Old Mexico, and now it's New Mexico. There are still 250,000 to 300,000 Pennsylvania German, that is to say Pennsylvania Dutch. In case you're wondering why it's called Dutch, the German word for German is Deutsch, which has been misheard as Dutch. The Dutch word, confusing things, the Dutch word for Dutch is Duits. Geechee or Gula is still spoken by about 5,000 coastal African Americans. Cajun French is still spoken by about 20,000 people within the home. Now, this has been a population that's been absolutely decimated as speakers. In the 1960 United States Census, there were 1 million Cajun French speakers at home in the United States, and that's all the way down to 20,000 as a first language. Keep in mind that 1 million at the time, that was about 1 in 170 Americans were speaking Cajun French in 1960 as their primary language at home, and many of them didn't really speak English at all. Louisiana Creole is still, which is a separate language than Cajun French, is still spoken by an estimated 7,000 to 10,000 people in the United States, with the heaviest concentration in southeastern Louisiana, St. Landry Parish. And there are other isolates. There's Michigan Flemish, still 1,000 people speaking that. Missouri French, still 500 people speaking that. There's Lumbee English. The North Carolina native variant has about 10,000 partial speakers. Jersey Dutch today is thought to be extinct for native speakers, but you total this up, and that's about 3.8 million Americans speaking one or more of these languages in some cases, especially in New Mexico, as their primary language. It's about 1.2% of the United States. More than 1 in 100 Americans are speaking a language that was there before the United States got there. Do we ever talk about this? Now, we also have Virgin Islands Creole, which is English-based, but you would struggle to understand it. That has about 20,000 speakers in the United States Virgin Islands. It's about 40% of the population. The Northern Mariana Territories of the United States have 10,000 speakers of Chamorro or Carolinian. That's about 70% of that population. American Samoa has 45,000 speakers of Samoan as their primary language. It's about 90% of the population there. The territory of Guam has 15,000 speakers of Chamorro. I may be pronouncing that incorrectly. My apologies. That's 85% of the population. And 98 to 99% of the 3.2 million people in Puerto Rico, as well as millions of Puerto Ricans or partial Puerto Ricans who have now moved to the mainland, speak Puerto Rican Spanish as a primary language. You also have 40,000 Alaskans who speak a variety of indigenous languages. Now, as far as official languages go, the United States has many official languages among its states. Hawaii, unsurprisingly, since its 1978 state constitution, has Hawaiian as a co-official language. It's used in state documents and in education. Alaska has 27 recognized languages. English is one of them. New Mexico has no official language. However, English and Spanish have both been used de facto as official languages of the state since the 1970s. Puerto Rico does have Spanish and English as co-official languages, and a variety of the other American territories have a variety of other co-official languages with English. Now, there's no good reason to be discriminatory against anybody based on the language that you hear them speaking at first, but you especially can't do this in a country in which 1.2% of the population, more than 1 in 100 people, is speaking a language at home and perhaps that you hear out on the street, which was there before the United States was. This is Chris. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Ignored Facts. I hope I presented some facts to you which should not be so readily ignored in day-to-day American life. If you enjoyed it, you know how to smash the like and subscribe. It's free. Why not? I'll remind you that I'll be coming back with more Ignored Facts. Now, the next video I'm going to take a look at undervotes in presidential elections and the massive impact that they have, which we really never talk about. I'm afraid there is going to be a little bit of math in that episode, but I'll try and make it as painless as possible. Till next time, take it easy.